Millenia is finally here, and with it comes the new Earthbound Prisoner archetype, and today we're going to find out if it's any good. What's potion? You got Matt here, and welcome back to another competitive Yu-Gi-Oh video. Millenia is releasing some amazing cards in the format, including of course Transaction Rollback and Bonfire, as well as a reprint of Triple Tactics Thrust and the Rescue Ace cards. But what it's also introducing is going to be an amazing new archetype in the form of the Earthbound Prisoner archetype. So in this video, I'll be covering the Earthbound Prisoner archetype, including an overview on what the cards do and how the deck works, cards and engines that you'll want to pair with it, and even cards that are going to help you beat it. So if you're excited for the video, then make sure to smash the like button. If this video hits 200 likes, I'll bring you an awesome Earthbound Prisoner deck profile. Speaking of which, if you like deck profiles, combo guides, meta discussions, and competitive Yu-Gi-Oh videos just like this one, you're going to love this channel. So make sure to subscribe and help us reach our new goal of 7,500 subscribers. But with that being said, it's time for us to find out how good is Earthbound Prisoner in competitive Yu-Gi-Oh. Let's jump into it. So the first thing we have to do whenever we get any new cards released is actually read the cards to find out what the cards even do. Well, Millenia is releasing 10 new cards as part of the Earthbound archetype, including one extra card that isn't really part of the archetype by name, but it might as well be. They are Earthbound Prisoner Stone Sweeper, Earthbound Prisoner Groundkeeper, Earthbound Prisoner Line Walker, Earthbound Prison, Earthbound Geoglyph, Earthbound Release, Earthbound Servant Geogracia, Earthbound Servant Geokraken, Earthbound Servant Geogriffin, and Earthbound Servant Geogremlin. And the card that isn't part of the archetype by name but might as well be is Harmonic Synchro Fusion. If you've been around Yu-Gi-Oh for some time, you'll know that Earthbound isn't a new archetype. This is just the next wave of support. The problem is though, the old support was for the Earthbound Immortals. These are Earthbound Prisoners and Servants, which is very different in terms of what they actually support in terms of strategy. But there are two other cards in the strategy that I want to touch base on, even though they weren't released in Millenia. They are Earthbound Servant Geogremlina and Earthbound Fusion. Geogremlina was a common release in Age of Overlord, and the card is essentially just a reinforcement of the army for any Earthbound card, so it's not that bad. And then Earthbound Fusion is being released in Phantom Nightmare, coming out in February in the TCG. It's an incredibly powerful quick play fusion spell for the archetype and should see some play eventually. But with that being said, let's take a look at each of these cards more in depth and find out what they do and how good they are individually. Starting off, we have Earthbound Prisoner Stone Sweeper. It's a level 5 Dark Fiend monster. It can summon itself out if there's a card in the field spell zone. The other effect of Stone Sweeper is the most important one though, where you can discard this card and add one level 3 or lower Fiend Tuner from your deck to your hand, but for the rest of the turn you can only special summon fusions and synchros from the extra deck. Earthbound Prisoner Line Walker is a level 3 Fiend Tuner. On normal or special summon, you can add one Earthbound Prison or Harmonic Synchro Fusion from your deck or graveyard to your hand. If you control a level 6 or higher Earthbound monster, you can banish this card from your graveyard and target one opponent's effect monster, special summon from the extra deck, and shuffle that effect monster back into the deck. Then your opponent can special summon one monster with the same name from their extra deck. Yes, you heard that right. Earthbound Prisoner Groundkeeper is a level 1 Dark Fiend Tuner. On normal or special summon, you can special one level 5 or lower Earthbound monster from your deck or graveyard except for itself, but then you're locked into fusions and synchros from the extra deck for the rest of the turn. It has a continuous effect where Earthbound monsters you control cannot be destroyed by battle or card effect while a card is in the field zone. Moving on to the extra deck monsters, and we'll start with Geogremlina since I'm sure we all just put that card straight into our bulk without even reading it. Earthbound Servant Geogremlina is a level 6 Dark Fiend Fusion. It requires one Earthbound monster and one Dark monster. On special summon, you can add one Earthbound monster from your deck to your hand. As an ignition effect, you can target one Dark Synchro you control and it can attack directly this turn. If a monster your opponent controls is destroyed by an Earthbound card effect, you can target one of those destroyed monsters and inflict damage to your opponent equal to its original attack. Earthbound Servant Geokraken is a level 8 Dark Fiend Fusion. It requires any 2 Earthbound monsters. On special summon, you can add any field spell from your deck or graveyard to your hand. Just this effect alone is crazy. Its second effect is that if a monster is special summoned from your opponent's extra deck, you can destroy as many monsters your opponent controls as possible that were special summoned this turn, and if you do, inflict 800 damage to your opponent for each monster that was destroyed. Earthbound Servant Geogracia is a level 10 Dark Fiend Fusion. It requires an Earthbound Fusion monster and an Earthbound Synchro monster. It must be synchro summoned, and at the start of the damage step, if this card battles a monster, you can change that monster's attack and defense to 0. If an opponent's monster is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can destroy all cards your opponent controls. If this face-up card in its owner's control leaves the field because of an opponent's card, you can special summon one Earthbound monster from your deck or extra deck. Earthbound Servant Geogremlin is a level 6 Dark Fiend Synchro. It requires one tuner Dark monster and one or more non-tuners. During the main phase, as a quick effect, you can target one face-up monster your opponent controls. Your opponent then chooses one of these effects for you to apply. Either destroy that monster or gain life points equal to that monster's attack. During the battle phase, as a quick effect, you can fusion summon one Earthbound Fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing materials from hand, field, and or graveyard. Earthbound Servant Geogriffin is a level 8 Dark Fiend Synchro, which requires one Dark Tuner and one or more non-tuner monsters. As a quick effect, you can special summon one Earthbound monster from your graveyard in defense position except for itself, and then you're locked into fusions and synchros from the extra deck. If this card in its owner's possession is destroyed by an opponent's card, you can non-target destroy one card on the field, then inflict 300 damage to your opponent for each Earthbound monster you control and in your graveyard with different names. Moving on to the spell cards, we'll start with the field spells, Earthbound Prison and Earthbound Geoglyph. Starting with Earthbound Prison. When this card is activated, you can target one effect monster your opponent controls and this card gains its effect. While this card is in the field zone, negate that monster's effects. During your main phase, you can normal summon one Earthbound monster in addition to your normal summon. If this card in its owner's possession is destroyed by a card effect, and you have an Earthbound monster on your field and or graveyard, have your opponent's life points, and if you do, negate the effects of all face-up cards your opponent currently controls until the end of the turn. Quick correction on my part, earlier I had said that Earthbound Geoglyph is a card that comes out in Maze of Millenia. In reality, it came out in 2019, that is my bad, but let's go ahead and get back to talking about Earthbound Geoglyph. Earthbound Geoglyph's effect is that while there are any level 10 monsters on the field, this card cannot be targeted or destroyed by card effects. You can also treat one Synchro monster as 2 tributes for the tribute summon of an Earthbound Immortal, and if a Synchro is special summoned, you can add one Earthbound Immortal spell or trap from deck to hand. Harmonic Synchro Fusion is a normal spell card that is absolutely broken. You send 2 face-up monsters you control to the graveyard, one tuner and one non-tuner, and you special summon one fusion and synchro from your extra deck that can be summoned with those 2 materials. You can't special summon from the extra deck except for fusions and synchros the turn you activate this card. Earthbound Release is a normal trap card. When a level 6 or higher monster is normal or special summoned, tribute one level 10 Earthbound monster and destroy as many monsters your opponent controls as possible, and if you do, inflict damage to them equal to the destroyed monster's total original attack. Earthbound Fusion is a quick play spell that lets you fusion summon one Dark Fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your field or hand as material. You can only activate this card in the main phase unless there's a card in the field spell zone. During your main phase, if a card is in the field zone, you can banish this card from your graveyard, special summon one Earthbound monster from your hand or graveyard, and then you're locked into fusions and synchros from the extra deck for the rest of the turn. Reminder, this card only comes out in Phantom Nightmare. So now that we've gone through all the cards, we now know what the game plan is trying to do. The main game plan is going to be to resolve Harmonic Synchro Fusion. Without it, the deck just can't keep up with the meta threats available today. The biggest problem that I have with this though is that the extra deck monsters are just fine. At the end of the day, the only really good one is Geo Kraken. Geo Griffin is also solid, but it's really only useful to get an extra body on field. And Geo Grasha, while it's a very strong card, undoubtedly, it's really hard to get access to onto the field. In my opinion, the deck can be played pure with like the OG Earthbound Immortal cards, but honestly, it's not going to be very good in terms of a meta deck, but it can definitely be a lot of fun. What I think is a lot more likely is that the Earthbound Prisoner see play as an engine in a deck that really relies heavily on fusion and synchro summoning monsters. And at the bare minimum, Stone Sweeper is a really solid card to get you access to any level 3 or lower Fiend Tuner monster. Now while there aren't a ton of them in the format right now, eventually we're going to keep getting more of them, so I definitely want to get my playset of this card. Now let's talk about ratios and how many of each card we want to play in a given strategy, starting off with a more pure variant like this one over here. If you're playing a pure variant, you definitely want 3 copies of Stone Sweeper, 3 Line Walker, 3 Groundkeeper, 2 Earthbound Prison, and 2 Harmonic Synchro Fusion. I also like these tuner packages, including 3 copies of Vision Resonator with 1 Crimson Gaia, 2 Revolution Synchron, 2 Assault Synchron, and 3 Tuning. The deck itself as a pure variant doesn't have enough gas to play just the Earthbound monsters. There's not enough bodies for it to do that. If played as an engine, you don't need as many cards, but I still like this at bare minimum. I think the Vision Resonator package is so strong in this strategy, especially after resolving Harmonic Synchro Fusion. But if you don't want to play it, you can always cut it. Basically, the engine is 10 cards directly for the Earthbound cards, 7 of which start the combo in Stone Sweeper, Groundkeeper, and 1-for-1. And the field spell Earthbound Prison is pretty cool, but it's not always necessary when played as an engine. Let's move on and start talking about cards that are going to see play when paired with the Earthbound Prisoner archetype, starting off with the Runic cards. These cards are all really good to pair with Earthbound Prisoner for a few different reasons. The first of which is that all the Runic cards can get you pretty much easy access to Runic Fountain, which is a field spell which can just give pluses to the Earthbound archetype. But more importantly, they're free special summons that you can use for Harmonic Synchro Fusion to go into powerful plays. And of course, the Runic quick play spells definitely give a lot of advantage to the strategy, because right now, the Earthbound deck doesn't have very much disruption on your opponent's turn. And if the Runic cards are being played in this strategy, don't be surprised to see a copy of Danglong First of the Yangzing being summoned off the effect of Harmonic Synchro Fusion. This is because on summon, Danglong can go ahead and search for a copy of 9 Pillars, which will allow the deck to get an extra copy for an Omni Negate. And of course, you'll also summon out a copy of Dragos Depelia, which is a really solid way to negate monsters. I've already mentioned cards like Vision Resonator, Assault Synchron, and Revolution Synchron, but all these cards are really important because they get you access to really nice extra deck pieces, including cards like Ancient Fairy Dragon, Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, Shen Shen, and even Bestial Dispatter. Speaking of Bestials, if you don't want to play the Runic version of the strategy, you can always pair them with the Bestials. The Bestial monsters are really good because it gets you access to Branded Regain, which can constantly recycle advantage which the deck desperately needs. And of course, when paired with the tuners, you get access to more powerful synchro monsters on the field. Now let's talk about cards that are going to help you beat the Earthbound strategy, starting off on your turn 0. Ash Blossom and Infinite Impermanence are both incredibly strong for a few different reasons, but the biggest is going to be the fact that they can negate the effect of Line Walker to get access to Harmonic Synchro Fusion. Please do not Ash the copy of Stone Sweeper. It gets them access to Groundkeeper, sure, which can be a little interesting to potentially negate with Infinite Impermanence or Ash Blossom, but I would only even negate that card if they don't have access to the Prison to get the extra normal summon, or they didn't summon it off of something like 1-for-1. Droll and Lockbird is also a really interesting card in this deck, and the reason why might surprise you. The deck only searches once, maybe twice if they start off with Stone Sweeper, but what's important to note is that this deck here will almost always be paired with other engines that do a lot of searching. So you either turn off the ability for the Earthbound Cards to get access to Harmonic Synchro Fusion, or you stop the other engine from getting access to their max capacity. As for cards that are good on your turn 1, I highly recommend a copy of Spellbound or something like Dimensional Barrier. The reason why is you can shut off an extra deck mechanic that the deck really wants to have access to. You already know they're not playing access to any Link monsters or XCs, so having access to something that shuts off either Synchros or Fusions can also be very nice. And Spellbound just being Spellbound is really nice, especially going into Harmonic Synchro Fusion. And then because the deck relies heavily on a spell card, something like Anti-Spell Fragrance can also be really powerful to just shut off a lot of what the deck does, especially if they're playing a runic variant. As for cards that are good on your turn 2, I wanted to highlight Super Polymerization to go into your own copy of Dragostapelia. Most of the time they're going to have that fusion monster on the field and possibly a dark monster that'll be a synchro, or if they left just a random Earthbound Prisoner on field, that itself is a dark monster. So you can get easy access to a Dragostapelia to create another negate. I also really like Forbidden Droplet and Dark Ruler No More because the deck itself is really heavily focused on monster effects to negate and disrupt their opponents unless they're exclusively playing the runic variant. And of course cards like Lava Golem and the Kaijus are also really good to get rid of individual negates and disruptions. Lava Golem I think is a bit better, but not every deck can play it. On the other hand, a card that I would recommend not being played against this strategy is going to be Nibiru, and the reason why is because majority of the time they can actually access Baronne de Fleur before or on their 5th summon, which means that the Nibiru is basically going to be dead for pretty much the rest of the turn. Now let's recap and talk about these cards. Firstly, the main deck monsters as part of the Earthbound Prisoner archetype are all incredibly powerful. You definitely want to see at least 3 copies of each of them, maybe 2 copies of Line Walker depending on the engine you're playing, to be able to resolve the effect of Harmonic Synchro Fusion. The problem to me though is the deck can't have a 1-card combo. Yeah, sure, you can discard Stone Sweeper to get access to Groundkeeper and get access to Line Walker and Harmonic Synchro Fusion. The problem is both those cards are tuner monsters, so you can't actually use the effect of Harmonic Synchro Fusion on both those cards. So you have to pair with something else as well to get the max benefits. But I will say, if you want to play a deck while being on a budget, this is a pretty damn good option, especially when paired with the runic cards. You can build the entire deck for pretty much $75 at the absolute most, which is going to be really cool to get a really solid strategy. So is Earthbound Immortal good? Honestly, it's fine. It gets the job done at the best case scenario, and I think it could have some success, but it won't see too much of it. And there you have it. You now have an introduction on how to use or beat the Earthbound Prisoner archetype. Now let me know down in the comments, are you planning on playing this deck? Honestly, I was pretty surprised about how good this deck could possibly be, and I'm a little bit intrigued about it, so I might just have to test it out. If you made it this far in the video, then you must have enjoyed it, so do me a favor and smash the like button. If this video hits 200 likes, I'll make sure to bring you an awesome Earthbound Prisoner deck profile. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter as well for exclusive content and sneak peeks. The link is in the description of every single one of my videos, and of course, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more amazing competitive Yu-Gi-Oh videos and to help us reach our new goal of 7,500 subscribers. And if you want to support the channel even more, then click on the join button to become a channel member. By becoming a channel member, you get access to exclusive emotes and badges, as well as member-only channels in the Discord server coming soon. But thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all next time.